Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my March wrap-up. March genuinely feels like the longest month of all time. On March 1st, I got the stomach flu and I was out for like 4 days, and it was the most sick I have been in a very long time. And with this whole coronavirus thing, it just feels like March has been never ending, and now it's finally the end of March. I myself have been quarantined in my apartment since March 23rd, so just about a week or so for me, but I'm very happy to say that in the month of March, I was able to read 13 books. It was one of my best reading months that I've had in a pretty long time. On top of those 13 books, I actually did also DNF 5 books this month. It was a pretty crazy reading month for me. I tried to read a lot of different things. And what 5 books did I DNF, you ask? The very first one is Her Royal Highness. I DNF'd this after 50 pages, but this is something that I'll probably still try to continue reading at some point. I just couldn't get into this book for the life of me this month, so I DNF'd it for now. I also DNF'd The Return by Rachel Harrison. I got 70 pages into this before I was bored out of my mind and I put it down. I also DNF'd Pines by Blake Crouch and Before We Were Yours. These are both books that I attempted to read during the backlist readathon that I hosted this month, and I got 100 pages into both of these. Could not get into either of them either, but these ones are both books I might pick up again at a later time. I don't really know. And then the 5th book is The Two Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. I got 60 pages into this, and then I was like, wow, I don't care about any of the characters or anything happening in this book. So yeah, it was kind of a rough road there for some of those books, but I've just been DNFing books left and right lately because if a book is not making me want to read it, then I'm just not gonna read it. You know, just don't have the time and don't care. As I said earlier, I read 13 books this month. As far as genres go, I read 1 historical fiction novel, 8 thrillers, and then 2 sci-fi and 2 romance novels. Clearly, I was just in a thriller mood for the entire month of March. Like, I could not kick the thriller mood. And then as far as my ratings go, I had 1 5-star book. I found a new all-time favorite. And then I had 2 4-star books, 4 3-star books, 3 2-star books, and 2 1-star books. I actually had 2 1-star books this month, which is pretty rare for me. Alright, so let's just jump right into what I read this month. The very first book I picked up this month was The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain, and this is a book that I actually read as a part of the video that I was doing for reading Jacqueline's favorite books. If you missed it, I'll link it down below. It was a super fun video to do, and this is my only 5-star of the month. This is one of my new all-time favorite books. If you didn't know what it is, it's actually like a historical fiction / time travel sci-fi kind of book. It basically follows this girl who's living in the 1970s and her husband has died in the war, and she finds out she's pregnant with his baby, but she finds out that the baby is going to be born with heart defects and the doctors won't be able to save it once it's born. And then she finds out that her brother-in-law is actually from the future and he wants to send her to the year 2001 because he knows in the future they have the technology to save her baby. And so it's about this mom traveling from 1970s to the year 2001 in an attempt to save her daughter. And oh my god, this story is so heartbreaking. It's so moving. The situations that this main character has to put herself in and the decisions she has to make regarding her family and her baby, like, I cannot even imagine. And this book is just written so well. I love the time travel aspect of it so much. It was so much fun to read, and there were literally pages of this book where I was like holding my breath, like waiting for the ball to drop. It was just like so intense, and I just absolutely loved everything about this book. There was a really good plot twist too towards the end that I did not see coming, and it was just great. Like, it's a new favorite of mine. I've been wanting to reread this book like every single day since I've read it, so if you haven't read The Dream Daughter, like, holy shit, read The Dream Daughter. This was an easy 5 out of 5 for me. Loved it. However, the next 2 books that I read for that same video didn't work out so well for me. The first one was Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson. This one is an adult thriller that I also read for the video of reading Jacqueline's favorites, and this one ended up being a 1-star book for me. I just really didn't enjoy this one. This one is basically about this woman who comes to this book club and she starts to like stir shit up, make everyone tell their secrets and stuff, and like, what's the worst thing you've ever done? And then this story is kind of just about this woman blackmailing one of the girls in the book club and trying to make her talk about her mysterious past that we get to read about. And I just found this girl to be so over the top with her villainous attitude, and it was just really cheesy to me, and I really disliked the ending of like where this book went. It just felt really awkward and uncomfortable to read about, and I just didn't like anything about this book. And then I also read The Other Woman by Sandy Jones. This is another book that I read for that video, and this one is also an adult thriller, and this one follows this girl who has to deal with her boyfriend's mom really not liking her and being kind of a bitch to her the whole book. This was another 1-star book for me. I think I realized about myself that I don't really like thrillers where the main like thrilling thing happening is that the mom is like hating on the girl that the boy's dating, and it's like really like mama's boy vibes and just kind of like, it's so over the top and so cliche, and the plot twists at the end of this book were just ridiculous. It was like Lifetime movie drama for me. Like, I don't know, it was just not my favorite. It wasn't really great. The next book I finished was He Started It by Samantha Downing. I actually got an ARC copy of this one. This one was supposed to go on sale in April, but I'm pretty sure I just saw the other day that they actually pushed this back to July, so that's kind of a shame because this book was so freaking good. I actually read this entire thing nearly in one day when I was sick in bed with a stomach flu. I literally just flew through this book, even though it is pretty long. It's like nearly 400 pages, but it is such a fun adult thriller to read. Holy crap. This one follows this group of siblings, Beth, Portia, and Eddie, and their grandfather just recently died and he's left their inheritance behind, but he wants them to take this road trip across America to go and get their inheritance, and they're kind of repeating the same road trip that they did when they were kids. And this family has so many secrets, and like there's somebody following them on the road, and there's all this shit going on in this book. I just loved it so much, and it's crazy because I don't usually like road trips. Like, I don't like to read about road trips at all, but this one was just so fascinating and it was so much fun, and I loved the relationship between all the siblings. It was really complicated to navigate their relationships, and it kind of reminded me of the movie Knives Out, like, to be honest, like with the whole like inheritance money and all this stuff. Like, it was just so much fun, and the ending of this book is honestly like so explosive and crazy, and I had to reread the last couple of pages like a few times to make sure I understood what was happening because I was just like, what? And yeah, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I originally had it at like a 4.5, but thinking about it later on, I was like, no, I think it's definitely a 4, but holy shit, loved this one. Highly recommend it. I love this author so much. Alright, next up, I also finally listened to the audiobook for Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I will say that I did actually see the series on HBO. I watched the TV show last year, and I wasn't a huge fan of the TV show, not gonna lie, and then I kind of feel the same way about this book. Like, I don't know, this book is an adult thriller, and this book is just really dark, like really extremely dark, and it has a lot of trigger warnings for things like cutting and depression and suicide and just very like sensitive things. So it was not easy at all for me to read this book, and I have kind of a queasy stomach when it comes to reading about things like this, and the descriptions are just so graphic. I was like, whoa. But at the same time, like, I do really love the mystery in this book. Like, it mainly follows this reporter named Camille who's coming back to her hometown because there's these mysterious murders happening in her hometown, and so she's trying to figure out like what's going on, and she has to stay with her mom, who they have a really complicated relationship, like her and her mom, which I really liked the family dynamics happening in this book, but this book just made me like so uncomfortable to listen to, and I don't know, I have like mixed feelings about this one. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was also a thriller, and that was The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter. I actually read this book for the Backlist Readathon. This is another one of those thrillers where the writing is a lot. Like, if you've ever read a Karen Slaughter, then you probably know that her writing is incredibly graphic, and it's really hard to read about, and it has trigger warnings for pretty much anything you can imagine, and probably some things that you can't even imagine because it's just so awful. In this book, we're following 2 sisters, Charlie and Sam, and we follow them when they're little girls. Like, the story opens with them as little girls, and this really awful and horrific thing happens to their family, and they witness their mother being murdered right in front of their eyes, and it's just brutal and gruesome and really hard to read about. And then the main story happening in this book takes place 28 years later, where we're following the young girl Charlie as an adult, and now she's working as a lawyer, and she's on this school campus when there's a school shooting that happens, and she kind of gets involved with it, and then it also kind of stirs up some things from her past again. This book was a lot. It took me a long time to get through this book because my stomach could not handle reading some of these things. Like, it was really, really traumatizing, but oh my god, this author writes so well. Like, her writing is so good. Her character development is so good. Like, she understands her characters so well, and her writing is just very smart. Like, she's one of the best writers that I've read out there. Like, her writing is just so fluid and beautiful, and she's a damn good writer, you know? But wow, this story just really like got under my skin and made me queasy and like, huh. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It is an enjoyable thriller. It is a really good thriller. It has some great twists in here that I did not see coming, and I really enjoyed it despite being a little nauseated while reading this. The next book I read was another one I read for the Backlist Readathon, and that is The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. And this one is an interesting book. It's like a young adult sci-fi-ish type novel that also kind of feels kind of contemporary somehow, but it follows this girl in the near future, and she is living on a spaceship by herself. Think kind of like Rapunzel or something, but on a spaceship. Both of her parents and all of the crew of astronauts that used to be on this spaceship with her are now dead, and she's by herself, and she's like a 16-year-old girl. The reason why she's on the spaceship is because they're hurtling through space going to the next potential Earth, because they want humanity to eventually move to this potential Earth, so she's going to be the first one to go and test the new Earth. And then this book is kind of about how they launch another spaceship out into space that's supposed to be able to catch up to her ship, and then they're going to be able to go together, and so she's not going to be like alone anymore. This book is kind of like a contemporary like coming of age story for this girl on this spaceship in the beginning, and then towards like the middle of this book it completely changes genres and just becomes like, what? Like, I just did not see it going in that direction at all. So this book was pretty crazy. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I do feel like the ending just got a little bit too dramatic and cliche and like too extra for my taste. But I do really like the idea behind this book. I think it's very, very interesting, and I think if it was just done a little bit better at the end, this could have been a favorite of mine. Like, it was a really cool idea. Another book I read during the Backlist Readathon is Dirty Letters by Vi Keeland and Penelope Ward, and this is one that I was really excited about because I really do love this author duo, and this one is like a new adult romance. This book is mainly about these 2 people, this guy and this girl, who have written letters to each other, like pen pals, for like most of their life, and then one day she stopped writing him letters and he never knew why, and then it kind of picks up again when they're a little bit older, like in their 20s, and she either like finds a letter from him or like somehow they get connected again and they start writing letters again, and they're kind of dirty letters. And I don't know, I didn't really like this book. I feel like the main characters were way too annoying and frustrating to read about. Like, they were both very stalkery towards each other, which is weird because like I would be like, whoa, he's a stalker, and then the next chapter I'd be like, whoa, she's a stalker, like, whoa, boundaries, this is not okay. Dirty Letters kind of bothered me because they went straight from being like, so how are you doing? I haven't talked to you in 8 years, to like, have you ever had an orgasm, in like 2 seconds. Like, it was way too fast. It was like they just went straight to the dirty stuff, and it was like, whoa. I don't know, I ended up giving this one 2 stars, was not attached to the characters at all, and just didn't really vibe with this one. Alright, the next book I read this month was 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson, and this one is another adult thriller, and this is one of my most anticipated books of the year because Peter Swanson is one of my favorite authors ever. This book follows this guy named Malcolm who owns a bookstore, and a long time ago he wrote this blog post called The 8 Perfect Murders. He took his favorite 8 mystery books with the perfect murders and just made a blog post saying like, these are the most perfect murders in all of fiction. And now there's somebody out there that is like copycatting and imitating all the 8 perfect murders that he wrote about. This book is really good, but I will say that this book does spoil all of those 8 books that he talks about in this book, so that includes like The Secret History and Agatha Christie's ABC Murders, Strangers on a Train, just to name a few. And so if you haven't read those other 8 books, then it kind of sucks because this book does spoil you for all of those books. So I will warn you about that. Like, I kind of thought that that was shitty, but I did feel like the writing in this book was very clever. Like, I don't know, there was just something about this book that I really enjoyed. Like, this book felt different than Peter Swanson's other books, and I don't really know how to explain it or like why I think it is, but it just felt like more sophisticated of a writing style or something. Like, I don't know. But I did enjoy this book, but I do feel like the ending was really weak and it just kind of like dropped the ball for me. So I did end up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it wasn't my favorite thing. It's actually probably my least favorite Peter Swanson that I've read so far, which makes me sad, but that's only because all of his other books are 4 or 5 stars for me. Like, he's still just like my favorite author, like one of my favorites, you know? The next book I read is Undercover Romance by Lisa K. Adams, and this one is the sequel to The Bromance Book Club, which is a romance novel that was one of my favorites of last year that I just loved so much, and me and Jacqueline actually buddy read this one this month, which was super fun. This one follows the characters Liv and Mac, and Liv is actually Thea's sister from the first book. Mac is like the guy who basically founded the Bromance Book Club, and in this book we're following Liv, who is working at this restaurant where she gets fired one night and she finds out that the guy who like owns the restaurant is sexually assaulting one of the girls that works for him, and so she makes it her mission to like take this guy down and bring him down, and so she needs the help of Mac and the Bromance Book Club to do that. So I feel like this book is kind of a little bit more serious than Bromance Book Club just because of the, you know, sexual assault and that kind of thing that's going on in this book. And I will say that I do think that the sexual assault storyline happening in this book took up a little bit more of the story than I think I wanted it to. Like, I just wanted more of Liv and Mac just being like cute together, you know? But I did really enjoy the romance between Liv and Mac. I thought that they were so freaking cute, and there were parts of this book that just had me smiling so much and just grinning and just giddy, and it made me so happy because I feel like I really needed this as a distraction with everything going on in the world right now. Like, it really just took my mind off of things, which I really appreciate. But yeah, I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. Like, I don't enjoy this one as much as the Bromance Book Club, and it doesn't have the same like magic to it that that book did, but I still really love this as its own thing. Next up, I finally finished reading You Are Not Alone by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekanen. This book was a buddy read that I was doing with my sister, but she kind of like bailed low-key. This book is an adult thriller. This one just kind of ended up being okay for me. I feel like it started off pretty strong, and then in the third part of this book it just really tanked and went downhill, and I just was not enjoying the ending of this book. But this book follows this girl named Shay who's in the subway in New York City, and she witnesses this other girl, Amanda, kill herself by jumping in front of the train tracks. And then she kind of gets involved in Amanda's life. Like, she tries to become friends with Amanda's friends, and she goes to the funeral and just becomes kind of weirdly obsessed and fascinated with this girl. And then she gets tangled in the lives of Amanda's friends. They're kind of like a very manipulative, controlling group. And yeah, that's mostly what this is about. The sad thing though is that I kind of predicted where this was going about halfway through the book, and then I just feel like the ending was so cheesy and bad, and I just really didn't like the ending of this book. I thought it was really lame. So I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars, which sucks because with this author, I feel like I just have a love-hate relationship with this author because I loved An Anonymous Girl so much, and then I really didn't like The Wife Between Us, so now that I haven't liked 2 of their books, I'm just like, I don't know, but I'm still gonna read anything that they write in the future because I'm hopeful. Right, so the next book I read this month was Dear Wife by Kimberly Bell. And this one, I actually read this book because Jacqueline was going to be doing a live show on her channel for this book for her Booktubers and Brews thing that she does. So I wanted to read the book so I could be a part of the discussion. This is another adult thriller, and this author previously wrote this book called The Marriage Lie that I really enjoyed. So I was looking forward to reading this one. It's basically about this girl named Beth who's like on the run from her abusive husband. And then in alternate chapters, we follow from the point of view of a husband who his wife has recently gone missing. And so we go back and forth between their 2 perspectives, and I was able to fly through this book within like a day. Like, this book has some of my favorite things, like really short chapters, and it's really interesting, and every chapter like ends on a kind of little plot twist that just keeps you reading. I don't know, I guess my main issue with this book is the ending, because I definitely predicted the big twist in this book, and I thought it was really easy to predict, so I wasn't really surprised by anything that happened in this book. But again, I wasn't really like mad at anything that happened in this book either, so I think it's like a totally enjoyable thriller for the most part, despite its predictability. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I originally had it at 4 stars, a little bit higher, but after thinking about it more, I do think it was more of a 3 star because I was able to predict it, so it kind of ruined some of the fun. And then the last book that I read this month is The Weight of the Stars by Kay Ancrum. This one is a young adult novel that's sci-fi and it's kind of contemporary, and I actually ended up DNFing this book at like 200 pages into it, but because I read so much of it, I'm still counting it towards my rating goal. Yeah, I ended up giving this one 2 stars because, I don't know, I feel like there are some things about this book that I really liked, but mostly I didn't. And I think I just kind of went into this book misinformed about what this book is about, because for some reason when I heard that this book was like a young adult sci-fi novel that's like partially about space, I thought it was going to be more sci-fi, but this book is honestly like a young adult contemporary with talk of astronauts and talk about space, but like that's really all you get. And this book mainly follows this girl named Ryan who's living in this really small town. Her family's really poor. Then she becomes fascinated with this girl who was the child of this astronaut that went to space. And so then this girl is like a celebrity in their town and they start to become friends. They have this like hate to love thing going on. And then she kind of like sits on the roof with her and they try to like get radio signals from outer space every night. And I don't know, I feel like I didn't connect with like any of these characters. I was just like bored out of my mind reading this, and I feel like this book is like your typical kind of young adult contemporary where the main characters just do a lot of stupid things and party all the time and do drugs and just like be teenagers. I'm just not really interested in reading anything like that, and I had just assumed that this was something different. I don't know, I just don't really like where this book was going either, and after the 200 pages that I read, I skim read the end of the book and I was like, what the heck? Those are all of the books that I read in the month of March. Even though I did only have the 1 5-star book, I still feel like March was a really good reading month for me. Like, I feel like all of the books that I gave 3 stars were really like high 3-star books, you know? And I think besides just The Dream Daughter, like the other ones that are going to be the most memorable for me are definitely Undercover Romance and He Started It. Like, these ones were so good and they were both close to 5 stars for me. Like, I considered giving both of these 5 stars while I was reading it. So yeah, those are all the books I read in March. Please let me know, how many books did you read in the month of March? What was your favorite best book that you read in the month of March? And also just, how are you guys doing? How are you holding up with everything going on? I know it's a really, really stressful time and I just don't really know what the future holds at this point. I just hope everyone's doing okay, and I hope that April is a better month for all of us. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!